If you're passionate about Basset Hounds, this podcast is for you.
This is Woebgon, the Basset Hound podcast. I'm your host, Don Bullock. Hi everyone, I'm Don. One of my biggest passions in life is Basset Hounds. Our Basset Hounds are our children. Currently we have Pecos, Heidi, Lexi, and our youngest is Emmy. This is episode 3 of Woebgon the Basset Hound podcast. In this episode, I share how we found a reputable, responsible breeder, attending dog shows, origins of Basset Hounds and dog shows, championship bloodlines, AKC disaster trailers, and more. I'd like to remind everyone who's listening to the audio version of Woebgon the Basset Hound podcast that show notes including photos of each episode can be found on our website, woebgonbassets.com. After our experience with Maggie and Lucy, Pam and I still love Basset Hounds. We thought for our next one we'd look into local breeders. We had no idea where to look for one. Remember, this is when Bassets were advertised in newspapers and in dog-related magazines. The internet and all that's come with it, both good and bad, was still years off. But Pam had noticed that the Beverly Hills Kennel Club advertised their dog show in the LA Times every year. Pam and I had talked about going to a dog show, so we were interested in going. We thought it might be a good way to meet breeders. As soon as the ad appeared in the LA Times in the spring of 1990, we thought we should go. Unfortunately, back then, their shows were always held on Sunday, and we sang in a church choir. In fact, I was the choir's president at the time, so taking a Sunday off wasn't easy to do. With the blessing of the choir director, we decided to take the day off from choir and go to the show. In those days, the show was held at the LA Sports Arena. That's a big, huge complex. The newspaper ad included the judging schedule, which gave a time and ring number for Basset Hounds plus how many Bassets were entered in the show. That Sunday morning, we headed off to the show, not knowing much about dog shows or what to expect. We approached it with both excitement and trepidation. As we arrived at the show site, Pam and I immediately realized we had never seen so many dogs. They were everywhere we looked. As we walked through the sports arena complex, we came across a table with people selling show catalogs. These catalogs listed the names of the dogs and their owners by breed, so we bought one. Show catalogs are available at all dog shows in case you're interested in attending one. At a dog show, each exhibitor wears a number on their left arm that matches the number listing in the catalog. The catalog really is handy when we approach the ring. Some of the exhibitors were already there with their dogs. Since some of the exhibitors were wearing numbers, we started trying to figure out which of the dogs we liked and who the breeder was using the catalog. As the time for Bassets to be shown approached, more exhibitors and their Basset Hounds appeared. We had never seen so many Basset Hounds in our lives, much less all in one place. I'd guess there were at least an entry of 20 to 25 Bassets that day. I can still picture it in my mind. This is a photo I found of the ring at the LA Sports Arena complex where the Basset Hounds were shown. It was taken a couple years later. When the time arrived for Bassets to be shown, several exhibitors entered the ring with their dogs. They all went around the ring, were individually examined by the judge, moved around the ring individually, and then again as a group. Then the judge made his selections. After some ribbons were handed out, those Bassets left the ring, and the next group of Bassets entered the ring. That group went through the same sequence of events before a third group did the same. This sequence of events continued until we had worked up to best of breed for the Bassets. We knew that we were at that point because the ring steward called out best of breed. When the best of breed class entered the ring, one Basset male stuck out to us for some reason. Remember, we had very little knowledge regarding the AKC standard for Basset Hounds at the time. According to the catalog, the male, or a dog in show terms, was bred by Gail Allen. We later learned her kennel name was Tailgate Bassets. We were very surprised when he won Best of Breed. That's the Basset Hound at the show that day. Looking back at the day, I should add that Pam and I knew very little about what was happening. We were just concerned on getting a good look at the dogs and picked out our favorites. Several stood out to us. It was interesting that sometimes we picked Bassets that the judge liked based on his placements. Now, I must admit that Pam and I were both very shy in those days. We really didn't talk to very many Basset Hound owners. The few that we did talk to mentioned that there was a local Basset Hound club and they were having their specialty show, which is a show just for Basset Hounds, and it was going to happen in a few weeks. They told us that we could expect approximately 100 to 125 Basset Hounds at the show. We also got the name of the park where the show would be held and basically how to get there. Remember, this was long before GPS systems in cars, much less Google Maps or a phone in our pocket that had the maps on it. In those days, we used Thomas guides. Those were books of actual maps. We used those to get around. So on the day of the Basset Hound Club of Southern California Specialty Show, we played Hooky from Choir again. Using our Thomas guide, Pam did the best she could to direct me through the freeways and streets to the park where the show was supposed to be. Upon arriving at the park, we saw Basset Hounds everywhere we looked. After parking and reaching the show site, we were met by a gentleman named Ralph Scarrow. I think we looked overwhelmed and lost at the time. He welcomed us and tried to explain what was happening. I had read some information about dog shows, so we were more attuned to what was going to happen than we were when we were at the Beverly Hills Kennel Club show. Fortunately, we had decided to bring some folding lawn chairs as suggested by the people at the dog show, so we found a spot next to the ring that was shady for us to sit. I must say, this is one of the best experiences that we've ever had related to dogs. During the breaks in the showing, we were able to wander around and look at the Bassets up close. They were all beautiful to us. Of course, Gail Allen was there with her boy and others from her kennel, but we saw even more like him that we liked. It was amazing. We talked to several other people other than Ralph as well. One young couple, Ron and Mary Lukens, were selling items that they had made with Basset Hounds on them. We bought a wreath from them and hung it on our wall at home. By the way, they'll play a very important role in our stories later, and that wreath started our collection of Basset Hound related items. For the most part, the people at the dog show were very friendly. We talked to a lot of people that day, but the others that I talked to, I don't remember specifically who they were. We were totally overwhelmed. After the specialty show, we started attending other all-breed shows like the Beverly Hills Kennel Club show on Saturdays. We enjoyed seeing all the dogs. These visits also added to our understanding of what was happening, and we loved seeing all the beautiful Basset Hounds. Pam and I were both elementary school teachers. Since summer was approaching, we started contacting some of the breeders whose Bassets we'd liked at the shows about getting a puppy during our summer break. Remember again, this is long before the internet. Since we only had addresses from the show catalogs, we wrote letters. Several weeks went by without any responses. Finally, we received a short note from Gail Allen with her phone number asking us to give her a call because she might have a boy for us. We were excited to hear from her because we really liked her Bassets. Pam made the call. She and Gail talked for quite a while. After Pam got off the phone, she told me that we had an appointment to go down to Gail's place in El Cajon, California, east of San Diego. That was over 3 hours away. Needless to say, we were excited. The next Saturday morning, we headed off to meet Gail and the Basset Hound male. We drove up to Gail's place, which was both a Basset Hound kennel and an Arabian horse farm. There was a place to park next to a gate to the property, As we walked up to the gate, we were greeted by at least 20 to 30 Basset Hounds just inside the gate. It was tempting for us to enter until a huge Mastiff suddenly showed up. He didn't bark, but he really didn't need to. The Bassets were doing plenty of that anyway. Soon Gail arrived. After shuffling the Bassets into a fenced area that was close by, she let us in the gate. Once we were inside, Gail led us over to a fenced enclosure. We entered it and Gail handed me a puppy male she called Chili. Now it's important to note that this wasn't the boy that Gail and Pam had talked about on the phone. I didn't care. Chili cuddled in my arms and wagged his tail. As I looked into his beautiful eyes, we immediately bonded. I was in love. When Pam asked Gail about the switch, she explained that since the call, they had been evaluating their dogs for show prospects. That morning, they had decided to change their minds on two of the boys. Chili didn't make the cut, but the other boy did. It's important to note here that we didn't go home with Chili that day. Gail wanted to get to know us and see how we reacted to the dogs, as well as how the dogs reacted to us. Essentially, Gail wanted to be assured that Chili would have a good home. She also wanted to give us time to think about him and the switch of the boys and her contract. This is a very common practice that reputable, responsible breeders use before selling a dog to anyone. Gail told us that she'd make a final decision on Chili going home with us and let us know. We could tell her then what our decision was. Just so you aren't kept in suspense, we did eventually take Chili home. In the next episode, I'll tell you all about Chili and what happened to him. It's a story of high highs and low lows. Very dramatic. Before I move on, I'd highly recommend that all of you attend a dog show. Yes, even those of you who always rescue Bassets. But don't take your dog with you. If you have local Basset Hound Club, find out when they have their specialty show. Remember, that's all Basset Hounds, and go to the next one. If you don't have a local Basset Hound Club or don't want to wait until their next show, find an all-breed club show to go to. You'll be amazed at seeing some of the very well-bred examples of our breed, and hopefully you'll go home with a better appreciation for the breed. Most Basset Hounds in the United States and elsewhere are shown by their owners, which are often the breeders as well. Basset Hound owners are a great bunch of people. Most of them are very friendly and willing to talk to strangers about their dogs. Well, yeah, maybe we'll brag about them too. I know by now you're asking, how do I find out about upcoming shows? Well, I'm glad you asked. All breed dog shows are organized by kennel clubs using a superintendent. These superintendents have websites that list all their shows. Here in Southern California, the shows are listed on jbradshaw.com. Just look under shows on their homepage menu. The rest of the country, most shows are found by going to infodog.com or onafrio.com. I'll have the links in the description. While searching these two sites for shows isn't necessarily easy, it's not too difficult. Look under upcoming shows. Give it a try. You can also search upcoming shows by using the AKC website, but negotiating that website can be difficult. If you're familiar with Google searches, you could try searching for upcoming AKC shows in your area. That should work. For those of you in other countries, something like a Google search may be the best way to find dog shows near you. About a week before the show you've decided to visit, go back to the superintendent's website and look for the judging schedule or judging program for the show. Once it's posted online, it will tell you how many dogs from each breed are entered in the show, the ring number they'll be shown in, and the time they'll be shown. Just understand that dog shows run on time. If a particular breed is scheduled to enter the ring at a specific time, that's when they'll enter the ring. Don't be late. When we went to our second all-breed show, as we were getting closer to the ring, we saw people coming towards us with their Bassets. Yep, they'd already shown and were headed home. We learned the hard way to go early to dog shows. Most breed clubs, like the Basset Hound Club of Southern California, for example, don't use superintendents. To find a Basset Hound specialty show, you can either consult the club's website if they have one, or send them an email. You can find all Basset Hound clubs and their contact information for the clubs on the BHCA website. That's basset-bhca.org. In future episodes, I'll have more to say about attending dog shows, including what to do and what to expect. For anyone who loves dogs, they are a great experience. You'll love to see all the different breeds, and you'll see some that you didn't even know existed. Oh, yes, and an important reminder, please leave your dog at home. Only dogs that are entered in a show should be at a show. Speaking of dog shows, I'll mention the first one that's related to Bassets in this Basset Hound history segment. In fact, it may be one of the first dog shows ever held in the world. Previously, I'd mentioned that at one time in France alone, there were at least a dozen Basset breeds. Short hounds go back even farther than that. There are pictographs of perked-eared short hounds on some of the tombs in Egypt. We know very little about these dogs except what was depicted in the pictographs. They give us an indication that these dogs were used as hunters along with being companions. We also know that there are hound-like dogs throughout Europe, but we have no idea if they were at all related to Basset hounds. The Basset type of hound dog is thought to have originated in France and is believed to be a descendant of the 6th century hounds belonging to St. Hubert of Belgium, which through his breeding at the Benedictine Abbey of St. Hubert eventually became what is known as St. Hubert's Hound around 1000 AD. St. Hubert's original hounds are descendants from Laconian or Spartus hounds, one of 4 groups of dogs discerned from Greek representations and descriptions. These scent hounds were greatly prized by huntsmen and the nobility who hunted stag and wild boar. Historians think that most obviously the direct descendant of the St. Hubert hound is the bloodhound that we have today. As forms of hunting changed, including shooting, these hounds spread in popularity throughout France, where hound breeding was taken seriously by the ruling classes, the aristocracy of France. You need to understand that rabbits were considered vermin because they destroyed crops. These short-legged dwarf hounds were prized by those who hunted on foot because they moved slower and more deliberately than those with longer legs. They could forge their way through the heavy underbrush where the rabbits hid. Dogs during this time were a symbol of nobility and wealth. For example, the French royal family is known to have gifted dogs to its princes to raise and keep as company. Noble women raised small dogs as pets, often lap dogs or toy dogs. In France during the Middle Ages, hunting became more and more of a privilege of the nobility, dignitaries, and the clergy. It's more important to note that keeping a pack of dogs required a lot of money and was limited to the ruling classes. These hunting breeds were expensive to purchase as well as maintain, an extravagance that only the elite could afford. There were even laws that prohibited commoners from owning such dogs or entering certain hunting grounds. Unfortunately, the French Revolution from 1789 to 1799 put an abrupt end to the ruling classes in France and also their kennels. Many strains of dogs became extinct, including the St. Hubert's Hound. As one historical scholar stated, most of the dog-owning aristocracy of this time in France literally lost their heads to the guillotine. I should add here that most of the documents and books were burned during the Revolution as well. Very little is known about what happened during this time period in France. The country was in great turmoil and the new aristocracy hadn't formed yet. The earliest drawing I've found of a Basset that looks similar to what we have today is in a book titled Ouvre complete de Buffon. That's Ouvre complete de Buffon. That's a mouthful. That was published in France between 1830 and 1832, at least 30 years after the Revolution. Other than the drawing, which I've included in the show notes, we know very little about the dog except the gun leaning against some bales of hay and dead rabbits on top of the hay. Obviously, the dog was used for hunting rabbits by a hunter using a gun. Some Basset-type hounds became popular during the reign of Emperor Napoleon III. That's from 1852 to 1870. Napoleon III even owned some. A few of his Bassets were immortalized in bronze statues, which have survived. In fact, many copies of these bronzes have been made over the years. I should warn you that some of them are being sold for high prices and they're fairly newly made. Under Napoleon III in the 1860s, improvements in financial security and transportation had been established in France due to the Industrial Revolution and political changes. The Société Impériale Zoologique d'Acclimation held the first French dog show in 1863 in Paris. Organized by scientists and members of high society, the show and subsequent shows had a refined, elite atmosphere. Most agree that the popularity of the Basset Hound can be traced back to the presentation of what we call Basset Français at this first show in Paris in 1863. Several breeds of low Basset-sized French hounds were exhibited at the show. Of great importance here are the Bassets of Count Le Cortelou de Cantelou, who spared neither trouble or expense to save his excellent examples of this smooth tricolor Basset, a utilitarian type with straight front legs known as the Chien d'Artus. He was assisted by Monsieur Pierre Pichot. Their Bassets were exhibited at this Paris show. In addition to those Bassets, Mr. Lois Lane developed a more spectacular type with crooked front legs known as the Basset Normand. It's important to note that Bassets from these two kennels were put together to form the Basset Artisan Normand, the foundation of our modern Basset Hounds. And the Paris show was where they were first seen by the public, including some British admirers. My apologies for butchering the French names. While I studied French in high school and college, that was a long time ago. Perhaps I should have invited Pam's nephew, who's from France, over here to say them, but you wouldn't understand him either. Remember, too, that in France at this time, every smooth-coated Basset was called a Basset Français. There was not a breed called Basset Hound. This is where I'll end today. In a future episode, I'll extend this to the naming of the breed and the first attempts to establish a distinctive breed called Basset Hounds through what is referred to as scientific breeding. It's important to note that the 1863 Paris Dog Show was held prior to the establishment of any form of standard to judge dogs by, as we do today at dog shows. It was an exhibition of the different dogs that some of the aristocrats had at the time in their kennels. There was no competition like we have at modern dog shows. As we move further along in the history of the breed, we'll see the establishment of breed standards. These standards have become the foundation of different breeds and thus dog shows. This is something that many people, including many who breed dogs, don't fully understand. Every recognized AKC registered purebred dog has its own unique AKC standard. These standards are written descriptions of what the AKC designated parent club of the breed, like the Basset Hound Club of America, feels describes the perfect specimen of the breed. These AKC standards are used here in the United States by licensed AKC judges at dog shows to adjudicate the dogs that enter their show ring. The judge's job is to select the best examples of the breed according to the standard for the breed. They do, however, have the right and power to withhold awards if they feel that a dog isn't close enough to the standard to be awarded. While this action is rather rare, it does happen. The idea behind dog shows is not a beauty contest. It's to help maintain the breeds by providing a way for breeders to prove their breeding stock through attaining AKC championships and post-2011 grand champions here in the United States. Attaining these titles requires earning points from several AKC judges at different dog shows. Dogs with these titles have proven in the show rings that they are excellent examples of the breed. Not all Basset Hounds, even those that are offspring of AKC champions, are worthy of becoming champions. This is a very important point. Even when a breeder combines two champions, it doesn't mean that any or all of the puppies will be capable of earning a championship. It's fairly rare for even half of a litter to earn championships. Sometimes none of the puppies in such litters go on to be champions. The fact that some breeders are using the term championship bloodlines when selling puppies is meaningless. I've noticed over the years that often the sire and dam of such litters that the breeders are using the label for are not even champions. Many times the champions in a bloodline for these dogs are 2 or more generations back, and sometimes the breeder is actually just telling a lie. Unless someone examines the dog's pedigree, they'll never know. Unfortunately, many people fall for this advertising. The term buyer beware certainly applies here. In future episodes, I'll share ways to research and determine if a breeder or scammer is being honest. For now, be very careful and investigate anyone whom you're considering getting a dog from. My standard myth for this episode goes back to the very beginning of Bassets and fits in here. It's the term French Bassets. Over the years, I've encountered people who claim they have a French Basset and even articles on French Bassets as if they're a current type of Basset Hound. Usually people who claim to have French Bassets and the articles about them are referring to Bassets that lack substance, meaning they're thin, very few or no wrinkles, small, plus they're light in bone with longer legs and small paws, sort of like our Lucy. I found a quote recently that points this out. The traditional French-style Basset with slimmer frame and longer legs will weigh less than the big, heavy show dog type that we have today. Nothing could be further from the truth. As I stated in a previous episode, that Basset Hounds are judged pretty much worldwide based on very similar standards. Heavy bone and dogs with substance have been part of the Basset Hound description and included standards since the breed's beginning in England. I'll cover more of that in depth in future episodes. The term French Basset has often been used as an excuse for poorly bred Bassets. Heavy bone is difficult to get in Basset Hounds and hard to maintain. Many breeders have never been able to get heavy bone in their bloodline, so they came up with a name, French Bassets, for the Bassets they breed. It sounds great to some, but simply a lie. It's another ploy to get your money and selling you an inferior puppy, or it's one that a scammer might use. I find it very ironic that some breeders advertise European bloodlines to get people to think their Bassets are heavier in bone and have more substance than American-bred Bassets, while others use the term French Bassets as an excuse for breeding lighter-boned dogs with less substance. Obviously, neither one of these groups has any clue as to what the standards of the breed state. By the way, I've seen actual French Bassets, and they are basically no different than those that are bred here. They certainly are heavy in bone with plenty of loose skin and short legs with massive paws, plus all the other qualities included in the FCI standard for Basset Hounds. In my opinion, the logo of the French Basset Hound Club backs me up. Obviously, the Basset depicted is a heavy in bone and very substantial, not what some people refer to when they say French Basset. Here's a photo of a Basset Hound I found on the front page of their website. Obviously, they feel this is an excellent example of a French Basset. Now on to some AKC news that I think is very important for all of you to know. AKC Reunite is proud to announce the 100th donation of an AKC disaster relief trailer to Holmesdale, Pennsylvania. AKC disaster relief trailers are deployed following natural disasters around the country and provide crucial equipment to create a safe, temporary home for at least 65 pets during the first 72 hours of a disaster. AKC Reunite CEO Tom Sharp stated, "Safe, effective pet shelter solutions in times of disaster are incredibly important, and AKC Reunite is helping communities across the nation to prepare for mobilizing AKC disaster relief." The need for assistance for pets came in light after Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans and surrounding areas in August of 2005. It's difficult to know the exact numbers, but the lack of preparation in regards to animal evacuations for Katrina appears to have resulted in the stranding of between 100,000 and 250,000 pets. I can't even imagine that. Just think, 100 to 250,000 pets were totally abandoned during Katrina. In many cases, people were told that they just had to leave their pets behind when they were rescued. As a result of Katrina in the fall of 2006, Congress passed H.R. 3858, the Pets Evacuation Transportation Standards Act of 2006, or commonly called the PETS Act. On Friday, October 6, 2006, President Bush signed the PETS Act into law. The PETS Act authorizes FEMA to provide rescue, care, shelter, and essential needs for individuals with household pets and service animals, and the household pets and service animals themselves following a major disaster or emergency. The key stakeholders in implementing the PETS Act are the states and local municipalities, as well as nonprofit organizations and private companies. These AKC Reunite trailers are made available as part of AKC's contribution to assisting pets that are evacuated. Here in San Diego, for example, we have 3 of these trailers. 6 AKC dog clubs in San Diego raised more than $65,000 to buy the 12-foot long trailers. During a disaster, animal services will haul them out to an evacuation center, and dog club volunteers will take over the pet shelter operations so animal control officers can return to the field and rescue animals at risk. Each disaster supply trailer comes equipped with 65 crates, fans, lighting, and generators, bowls, collars, leashes, kitty litter, cleaning supplies, microchips, and microchip scanners. The supply allows volunteers to set up a small animal shelter inside an evacuation center to house pets until the danger has passed, and then they can easily dismantle it. As one whose families and dogs have had to evacuate due to a wildfire, I know such a service is very important. Fortunately, when the lilac fire swept through near our home here in 2017, while I was in rehab facility for my heart bypass surgery, we had friends that were able to provide place for Pam, her mom, and our 5 Bassets at the time to live in their house. Fortunately for us, the fire only came within a mile of our house, but the evacuation lasted several days until the electricity could be restored in our area, and the fire department was sure that all the hot spots had been extinguished. I know that many weren't as fortunate as we were in having friends to stay with, so the AKC trailers in San Diego County came in handy for those who weren't so fortunate, especially those that lost their homes. If your local municipality doesn't have one of these trailers, you can contact AKC Reunite Disaster Relief Department to find out what needs to be done to get one. I'm sure, as we saw here in San Diego, there's a lot of fundraising that needs to be involved. I know most of you, if not all of you, are concerned about the health of your Bassets. The Basset Hound Club of America has collected some health links on their website that you may be interested in checking out. They are excellent and have been thoroughly checked over by the BHCA's Health and Research Committee. While I realize that I've mentioned the BHCA's website and its health information, I think it's important to especially point out these links. It's important to be informed about the health issues they link to so you're prepared for something that might happen to your Basset. It's also important to note that the website states the following Basset Hound health links are provided for information purposes only and are not meant to replace advice and care of your veterinarian. The Basset Hound Club of America cannot give advice or answer questions about specific health issues or concerns. If you think your Basset Hound may have a health condition and might be sick, please contact your veterinarian as soon as possible. I must add that this is the best advice that anyone can give. Your veterinarian is your best source for specific issues with your dog. Many times I see people asking for help on the internet today. Often the questions they ask require a response from a qualified veterinarian, not someone like me who has no professional qualifications. If your veterinarian has difficulty with the health information that you need, you can contact another veterinarian who's an expert in the area. That's always an option. Links like those on the BHCA website are meant to give Basset Hound owners general information about some of the health issues that Basset Hounds can have. They are not meant to provide or advice on issues you may be facing with your specific Basset. It's important, however, to become familiar with many of the health areas that are linked on the BHCA website. Just so you know, I'm certainly not qualified to answer any of the health questions that you might have. I fully agree with the BHCA's position. When your Basset Hound is displaying any type of health issue, please consult a veterinarian. Don't wait for someone on the internet to give you advice on what you need to do. I received the following questions through my email link on my website. Dear Dawn, I'm Georgia from Italy. I'll be welcoming my first Basset Hound puppy in a month, and your new podcast is exactly what I was looking for. It'll be very helpful to learn more and more each day about this beautiful breed. I look forward to listening to your weekly episodes. There are two things I wanted to ask you. Number one, are Basset Hounds as loud as they say? Number two, is it okay to bring a Basset Hound to the beach often? There's a famous beach about 10 miles from where I live, as well as other wonderful seaside locations. Thanks in advance, Georgia. Before I address her questions, I'll let all of you know that I did send Georgia a reply because she'll have the puppy before this episode is published. My answer here is somewhat different than the answer that I sent to her in my email reply. I've had more time to think about my answer. First of all, I appreciate that you're listening to the podcast. Unfortunately, the episodes will now be limited to monthly, not weekly. Thank you. You've asked some good questions. Number one, as to noisy Bassets. The loudness of Basset Hounds varies greatly. Over the years, we've had some that howled or barked quite a bit, while others didn't howl or bark at all. We've found that finding ways to discourage a puppy from barking often works. The techniques to do this are very different for each puppy. And like with children, you never know exactly what's going to work. There's no one solution. I wish there was. One factor to be considered with Basset Hounds is that many don't want to be alone. They often bark or howl because they've been lonely, and traditionally Basset Hounds were bred to live in packs. Being alone is not something most Bassets like. Sometimes something as simple as leaving a radio or TV or anything else with people talking when the Basset is alone helps. Just the sound of someone's voice seems to comfort them. Obviously, a second dog is your best option. I'll add here that currently we have some very noisy Bassets. Keikos, our male, has a very loud bark. He's better than the alarm that we have for letting us know that there's someone in our driveway. Keikos is the only one our neighbors say they can hear when he's out in the yard. When Pam starts preparing dinner for the dogs, Keikos barks until he sees her coming with his bowl. Our 3 girls are pretty quiet. They don't bark much unless they see someone on our property or there are dogs and the lady down in the yard below. All 4, as I'm sure you'll hear at least once on this podcast, howl whenever Pam leaves the house through the laundry room door. They think she's left them and they're not happy. These howling sessions are usually started by our oldest girl, Heidi. The others rarely howl if she doesn't get them started. Whether our dogs' behaviors are common or not, I'm not quite sure. In the past, we haven't had a loud barker like Keikos or Bassets that howled often like the girls do. Question 2, taking a puppy to the beach. It sounds like you live in a beautiful beachside location. While there's no problems that I know of taking a Basset Hound to the beach, please don't do it before the Basset is fully grown. Walking on loose sand can be very challenging and difficult enough for people. Just think how much more difficult it would be with very short legs. The bones and joints of young dogs, especially dwarfs like Basset Hounds, take a while to fully develop. During that development period, it's not a good idea to place excess stress on the joints. Things like stairs, sand, mud, snow, and anything else that requires more effort for a young dog to walk can place a lot of stress on their unformed joints. Puppies do need exercise, though. Build up the strength of your puppy over time. Start off with short walks on solid surfaces, maybe once or twice a week. Slowly extend those walks in distance and frequency. Keep in mind that a Basset Hound's bones and joints are not fully formed until they are about a year to 18 months old. After that, there's plenty of time to take your walks to the beach. Just remember when you do start them walking on sand to start off with short walks and build up the Basset's strength over time for those longer walks on the beach. It sounds wonderful. I think we've only taken our Bassets for a walk on the beach once when we were visiting the Oregon coast. It was a lot of fun, but getting the sand out of their coats, especially the one we were showing a few days later, took quite a bit of work. We actually took the show dog to a groomer before he went to the show. Most of the beaches where we live now just don't allow dogs. I know someone out there is going to say, why do you need to wait until they're 18 months old for the puppy to be considered full grown? Well, according to the AKC, dogs between 51 pounds and 100 pounds aren't considered fully grown until they're about 18 months old. Our Basset Hounds fit into that scale of weight, but we're always conservative by telling those who get our puppies to wait that full 18 months for their puppy to be considered full grown. Now, according to the Kennel Club in England, there's a 5-minute rule about assigning exercise for puppies. They say that 5 minutes of exercise per month of age up to twice a day until the puppy is full grown. Once a puppy is full grown, your dog can exercise for a longer amount of time. We've sort of found that with our litters of puppies. The older the puppies get, the longer their play sessions. It is important to make sure that your puppies do get exercise, but it's just the kind of exercise that you need to worry about. I'd suggest consulting the puppy's breeder, your veterinarian, or other experts on Basset Hounds if you want more information. In addition to that advice for Georgia, another good friend and longtime Basset Hound owner suggested that I should remind my listeners they should not take their puppies out in public until they're fully immunized. This is very important since this podcast has such a wide-ranging audience. Giving specific immunizations isn't possible. You need to check with the breeder of the puppy and your veterinarian for what's appropriate in your area. Here in the United States, for example, parvovirus is easily spread and can be deadly, especially for puppies. We're extremely careful when we have puppies. It's often picked up on the bottom of feet and shoes. Anyone who enters our home when we have a puppy or litter, including us, must leave their shoes outside or dip them in bleach before entering the house. We continue this procedure until the puppies are fully immunized. A special thanks to Georgia for the questions for this episode. If you wish to ask some questions, remember the links on our WoebgonBassets.com website under podcast. You can record an audio question that can be played on the air on an upcoming episode, or submit a question by email using the links on the website. I'd love to hear from you. The dog quote for this episode comes from author Louis Sabin. No matter how little money and few possessions you own, having a dog makes you rich. I can certainly agree with his assessment. Our dogs have truly enriched our lives. We're very grateful for that. As I've said before, our dogs are our children. Show notes are on the website along with appropriate links and any photos that were included in the YouTube version of this episode. Please like this podcast on YouTube and give the audio version a high rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Sharing the podcast will be greatly appreciated. That's the best way for it to be discovered. I'm sure all of you Basset lovers know other Basset lovers that would enjoy the podcast. Thank you very much for your help. Now that we've established several episodes of Woebgon the Basset Hound podcast, please seriously consider subscribing to it on YouTube or follow it wherever you listen to podcasts. By subscribing or following wherever possible, you'll really help us, plus you won't miss out on any of the episodes. You can find announcements of upcoming episodes on our website and Facebook page. Speaking of upcoming episodes, in episode 4 of Woebgon the Basset Hound podcast, I'll tell Chili's special story. It's a real tearjerker, but very uplifting as well. I'll also be covering another inherited disease, glaucoma. Since I suggested attending dog shows in this episode, I'll tell you more about what to do and what to expect at dog shows, plus a whole lot more. Thank you very much for listening.
Woebgon the Basset Hound podcast is published in visual form on YouTube the first Monday of every month. A full-length audio version of each episode is published 1 week later wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our Woebgon Bassets website for show notes including photos from every episode. You can also find links to the podcast plus information on Don and his wife Pam plus their Basset Hounds. Woebgon the Basset Hound podcast is produced, researched and hosted by Don Bullock. The music is Do Your Ears Hang Low played by Nasrality from the Philippines. It's available royalty-free on Pixabay. Please give this podcast a thumbs up on YouTube and a high rating wherever you listen to podcasts.
Until next time, this is Don. Thank you very much for listening.